Hello D&D players far and wide, thank you for stopping by. Today we're going to be making a tier list about the best classes in D&D for veteran players. Now I've already made one talking about what classes are best for newer players, so you can look at that here. And today, once again, these tier lists are more of a laid-back video series, less scripted, talking through my thoughts just generally, just a few notes here on each class. So, let's get into it. Firstly, I want to talk about why I'm ranking the classes the way I am. And so, these are kind of some of the criteria. I'm asking, can a class completely alter the game? Can you do things with this class that no other class can do? That will get a class a lot of points, where if you can pull off maneuvers or tactics that you can't find anywhere else, and a veteran player will know to pull off those tactics, will know to do those things, automatically, I'm going to put you higher. Do you throw off the game's balancing? There are certain classes that break the balancing curve, and at certain points, if you are playing one of those classes, you will feel more powerful. It's just how it is in D&D 5th edition sometimes. So I'm going to be looking at that, looking for classes that do really just buck that power curve. Are you a menace towards pre-written adventures? Because with that power curve, a pre-written adventure for 5th edition is designed to account for the average. But if you walk in and you throw off that average, and maybe your group plays a lot of pre-written adventures, or maybe you're walking into an Adventures League game and you pull out a character with this class, and all of a sudden things are off, I'm going to account for that highly, because your class is then bucking the normal power curve. And then I'm also looking for a kind of a combination just from the raw power that the class can output. So baseline, how powerful is the class, and then how a veteran's experience adds on to that power level. So you could have a very simple and very powerful class, but it might only get an A. It might only make it to A tier, because a veteran can get more out of that other class. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Hey, quick note before the video starts. 99% of the people who watch my videos are not subscribed. As a small video creator, this sucks because it means the algorithm buries my videos. So, if you could, like, comment, and subscribe if you really want to help this channel. Hope you like the video. Here we go. Alright, here we go. First up, we're going to be looking at the Artificer. Now, the Artificer is a very powerful class in the hands of a veteran player. I'm putting it in the A tier, because an Artificer requires you to know so much about the game in general in order to make it work. But when it is working, an Artificer can get absolutely crazy. I mean, probably people have been starting to see the Artificer builds with like a 23, 24 AC. They're starting to see Artificers that have an incredible wealth of magical items. Flash of Genius is super powerful. An Artificer is an arcane caster with healing abilities. They are just very useful, very versatile. One of the things that just holds them back is a smaller health pool, but veteran players generally are safer than new players. They can keep themselves out of danger better. And so, honestly, Artificer, A, super powerful, super strong. Next, we're going to go for a Barbarian, and they're D. A veteran player and a new player are going to be playing a Barbarian in a very similar way. The veteran player is not going to get a whole lot more out of the Barbarian. I think veteran players with their knowledge are actually going to be more limited with most of the Barbarian subclasses, and then you have to look at some of the most popular Barbarian subclasses. Path of the Zealot, Path of the Totem Warrior, Path of the Storm Herald. And when you look at these, you're not getting that mechanical depth. You're not making a ton of choices. I mean, you're just kind of average. And with veteran players who choose a Barbarian, I see that they're a little bit disappointed. They wanted to be able to do more. They have all this knowledge. They can do all these things, but unfortunately, the Barbarian holds them back, and that just kind of sucks. So, for that reason, Barbarian is at the bottom of D tier. Next, we're going Bard. And if any of you have a veteran player who plays a Bard, and who's not a jackass or a wangrod, and actually is a helpful Bard who helps the party, who builds a character that is serious or serious enough. Bards are naturally jokesters. But if they are a good player, solid, helping the party, know what they're doing, and you can trust them at your table, a good veteran player who's a Bard is S tier. They can break the game. It's pretty obvious. Lore Bards, just being able to pick up so many new spells and expertise, jack of all trades, will allow them to fill out any role, any position. They raise a party up. They make a party more powerful, because a Bard can do a little bit of everything. And that being able to do a little bit of everything, and being able to do some things the best in the game, that's incredible. They're charisma casters, so obviously face of the party, that charisma score is going to be used a lot. It can do many things, super versatile. I personally love playing charisma characters, so I'm a little bit biased here. But the Bard spell list, super powerful, has good healing spells, lots of utility. Some spells in the Bard spell list are a little bit underlooked, but, you know, veteran D&D players will know the benefits of a heat metal spell, or hypnotic pattern, or things of that nature, dissonant whispers. And Bards are just, they're powerful. They're powerful. A well-placed bardic inspiration can completely change the outlook of a combat, making a failed save a success, making a critical attack that missed hit, and veteran players who know how the game works will make everything easier, make everything better. I mean, Bard, S tier. Bards are firmly S tier in my opinion. Cleric. Clerics are super powerful. They are really good. However, lots of the choices here for a veteran player are based off of your domain. There are certain domains that are better than others for a cleric. I don't think any domains are bad. I think some domains are significantly more powerful than others. You can see in Critical Role the difference between Jester and Caduceus. A Grave domain cleric is much more powerful, has a lot more options to change the game than a Trickster domain cleric. However, when it boils down to it, you still have all the same spells as a newer player. The mechanical differences are lessened. You're extremely powerful, and if you're playing a cleric right, you can keep a party of dumbass new players alive. I mean, a Forge cleric can take care of so many positions in a party and make sure that everyone will at least make it through the next encounter, because you're there, you have enough AC to defend yourself, and you can defend everyone else through just tanking. Your healing spells as well provide a lot. I mean, clerics are really good. It's because maybe they don't have all the other options of some of the other classes, and then past 10th level, you're not getting a lot as a cleric. You're not being rewarded for choosing a more complicated class. And so after about 10th level, as a veteran player, you're not getting all those new toys and gadgets to play around with, and so you begin to stagnate a bit from what I've seen from players. Again, veteran players still love clerics. A veteran player who wants to help the party will go Bard or Cleric. I'm putting Cleric in B because, you know, at the later levels, it's a little bit lackluster. Now, we go towards a pick that might be extremely controversial. Extremely controversial. I'm putting Druid top of S. Top of S. Now, before you go into the comments with your pitchforks, let me explain why the Druid is here. A Druid can manipulate the battlefield better than any other class. A Druid can have more hit points than any other class with their wild shapes, with their higher hit die. They have a D8. A Druid can do damage. A Druid can heal. I mean, you look at, I believe, Circle of Dreams Druids are incredible. They have amazing healing spells. They have access to Healing Spirit, but they also have access to incredible buffs and utility. They have access to Pass Without Trace. A Druid makes everyone in their party stronger. Their spells are incredible. Now, they don't do as much damage as other classes here. In fact, Druids and Bards essentially do the least amount of damage in the game. However, it's kind of a misnomer, because what they do is allow other classes to do even more damage, or make it so enemies can't do damage, which is huge. That's massive. Like, a Druid controlling the battlefield and making it so enemies can't move? Incredible. That's great. And then you have to look at their subclasses. Circle of Stars Druid, Circle of the Wildfire Druid, Circle of Dreams, Circle of the Shepherd, and then, of course, Circle of the Moon Druid. They have so many amazing subclasses that change how the Druid plays. And Circle of the Moon, the subclass for Druid, is the most powerful subclass in the entirety of 5th edition. I mean, all you have to do is look at Keyleth from Critical Role. Getting a Moon Druid to level 20 makes them essentially immortal. You can never beat them. Their wild shapes are essentially infinite. They have all these elemental forms. They can turn into earth, fire, water, air elementals. They are insane. They are absolutely incredible. I've been barred from playing Druids in a lot of campaigns because I know what I will do. I will break a game as a Druid. And you might say, as a DM, well, if their spell casting is a problem, I'll just throw in a mage to counterspell them. Okay, I'll just wild shape. I have another avenue to do my thing. They say, okay, if you're doing that, then I'll just throw in enough fighters to take down that wild shape. And then I'm looking at you and saying, well, okay, but there are other things that I can do. I can move outside the range of a counterspell. I can manipulate the battlefield. I can heal. I can do anything that I want. And if you're trying to stop everything that my Druid's doing, then I'm breaking your game. Like, if you have to specifically add in new things into a combat encounter, specifically to limit the power of this one class and this one player, you're breaking the game here. Because if that Druid is never in any danger and is just manipulating the battlefield, that's super powerful. Now, if you look in my last video, I put Druid in D tier, almost completely last, because Druids are incredibly difficult to play. Their spells, when you first look at it, might not seem all that appealing. A spell like Plant Growth is a 3rd level spell, and essentially what it does is it locks down the battlefield, making everything have 5 to 10 feet of movement speed. That's incredibly powerful, but to a new player, they look at a spell called Plant Growth, they have no idea how powerful that spell is. They have no idea how powerful Speak with Plants or Speak with Animals is. They have no idea the power of a Druid. So, I would love to hear what you guys think about this, because I personally love Druids. I know that they're not played a lot, so a lot of people don't know their power, but what do you guys think? Is Druid S tier? Alright, moving on. Fighter. A fighter, bottom of A. Now, let me explain this. A fighter in the hands of a veteran player. Like, sure, you can call a fighter dull. I don't think fighters are dull at all. I think a fighter is actually an RP heavy class, because it requires a player to RP them. They don't have all these built-in like RP mechanics. If you want to roleplay a fighter, usually it's players with imagination, who are describing their attacks, who are describing what they're doing, who are adding in flavor to their own backstories. But on the battlefield, a fighter actually has a lot of mechanical options for a veteran player. Sure, a new player can step in and they can use a fighter, like, pretty easily. But a veteran, what are you giving them? You're giving them a second wind. Which is a healing, but you have to know, okay, when am I using this healing? An action surge. Action surge, in the hands of a veteran player, is something that maybe you hold on to at the beginning of a fight. You don't use it right away. You use it in a moment where you need it. I mean, it's a big strategic tool. You have things like Indomitable. You have, of course, your subclasses. The fighter subclass gives you so much. From the simple champion to the Battlemaster. And the Battlemaster fighter is incredibly powerful. Gives you a lot of mechanical options. And of course there are new fighters. So we just got the Rune Knight and the Psy Warrior. And both of those, incredibly powerful in the hands of a veteran player. And then with the right race combination, fighters get incredibly powerful. I mean, you make a fighter Githyanki, that's a force to be reckoned with. A fighter Loxodon, a fighter, you name it. And you're beginning to change how the battle works. I mean, you can go and you can output lots and lots of damage, especially once you make it to 5th level. If you get a fighter to 5th level, that's when the fighter class really starts taking off. Now, it's not going to give you the incredible power of a Druid or Bard, but it's not going to limit you like a Barbarian. The fighter gives you options, gives you choices, it rewards veteran players who understand things like flanking, maybe. Maybe you use flanking rules, so positioning is now important. Or maybe you picked up the Sentinel feat as a fighter. Placing your fighter strategically around the battlefield to protect your spellcasters or your ranged damage dealers or your supports is very important. That's only something that a veteran player is going to know. A veteran player would not only be thinking about their own character in combat, but how to help everyone else's characters in combat. Alright, next up, we're going with the Monk. Another maybe controversial pick. I'm putting them in B tier. A Monk is dependent on a lot of ability scores. They are dependent on player skill. And if you know what you're doing with a Monk, and you can look at a creature and go, I wonder if they have a good constitution save. Do I want to use my stunning strike on this? Or maybe if you look at a creature and go, you know what? I'm going to use my dodge action as a bonus action. I'm going to burn a key point, do my patient defense, and I'm going to make sure that I live another round. Like, these are the decisions that separate a decent monk from a great monk. Because a great monk is a force on the battlefield, especially with individuals that aren't resistant or immune to stun. The fastest way to get through a boss monster's legendary resistances is to have a monk run up and just stun the hell out of it. Because if you have a monk that is making something burn through all of its legendary resistances, those spellcasters in the back are licking their chops. Like, they are about ready to absolutely destroy your boss monster. And a monk can do that. Now, the problem with a monk is they don't have necessarily the hit points of a frontline fighter, which they pretty much are. They don't have the damage of a frontline fighter, which they pretty much are. You can make ranged monks. I mean, the Sun Soul monk is useful at range. You can use a Kensei. But mainly, you're in the front lines with a monk. You also have to manage your key points very, very diligently, especially at the lower levels. And that's a problem. The new subclasses that have been put out for the monk and that are coming out with Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, there's a dragon monk that is essentially being released. those are more helpful. They have abilities that aren't all dependent on your key point pool, which is very, very nice. But right now, with a monk, for everything amazing that you can do as a veteran player, you're still being held back. You can be incredibly great, but as a veteran player, you might feel a little bit shackled by the monk. You might want to go beyond. Now, this might change, and if you ask your dungeon master, hey, is there a way that I can get more key points? Or do something like that, a magic item, for instance, that's maybe just a pocket well of key points? Then this monk goes to A or S tier. A veteran player talking with their DM and helping to buff the monk a little bit, allowing them to do more, is going to be a lot better. But right now, where the monk sits in 5th edition, just solid B. Paladin. Maybe another little bit of a controversial pick. They're at the top of B tier, because Paladin's extremely powerful. But when you look at some of the most powerful Paladins, they're multi-class. I'm not really talking about multi-class potential right here. I'm talking about the pure class. And veteran players rarely take a Paladin to 20. They rarely do it, because after a certain point, after 8th level, 9th level, 10th level, you stop getting a lot of benefits from the Paladin. You're once again a little bit limited. It's like the Cleric. It's a front-loaded class. You're getting a lot of the things at the beginning, but then it kind of tapers off. You'll be able to do damage, well, up to a point. There comes a point where a fighter will surpass a Paladin in terms of damage, unless the Paladin gets a critical hit, and then all bets are off. But the fighter will be able to do consistent damage for longer. Paladins have access to a lot more roleplay potential, but also you have the risk of having your lawful stupid Paladin who really messes with the rest of the party and does things to group cohesion that it's not good for a game. And that's not the fault of the class, that's just kind of a stigma that the Paladin has. And also, spell slots. We gotta talk about them. A veteran player who wants to use their spells will have a hard time doing so, because every spell that they cast is a smite that they don't get. So unless you are 100% sure you're not going into combat, I've seen a lot of veteran players who just don't want to cast spells. They will sit back and they'll say, I'll cast, no. I don't want to cast this yet. This could turn ugly. This costs a 2nd or 3rd level spell slot. And, I just can't do that, because what if we get into combat and I get a natural 20, I'm going to want this for a critical hit. And that's a problem. And they're not necessarily wrong, because that's a good way of thinking. A veteran player will be thinking ahead. But it also means that you're limited with the Paladin options. There's a limited ceiling. You're only going to be getting, 2 attacks per turn for most of the time that you're a Paladin. So those misses are going to hit you even harder. And to really get around that, a lot of veteran players or min-maxers are going to multi-class. But we're not talking about multi-classing. We're talking about just Paladin. And for that reason, Paladin's B. It's super powerful. If you are a veteran player who plays Paladins, you probably know what you're doing. You can probably min-max your character super well and do X, Y, and Z, and boom. It's like, hey, I just did 150 damage. This is great. And your party would be like, yeah. But it's also, it's not a lot of thinking that goes into that. The most thinking is resource management, where you have other classes above the Paladin, like Artificer, Bard, Druid, and even Fighter to a degree, that are making more decisions and are doing more than just managing resources, which is what a Paladin's doing. Paladins are super strong, but they're B. Alright, now we're going Ranger. Ranger is going to be bottom of B, because you can get more out of a Ranger when you know the rules of the game, when you're exploring, when you can use everything to your fullest advantage, when if you're a veteran player, you probably have picked up Tasha's Cauldron of Everything if you're wanting to play a Ranger. So you know all the pitfalls, you know which spells are good, which ones are bad. The Ranger class, although still kind of holding some people back, you're not going to be reaching those grand heights. Now, you're not going to be as bad off as a Barbarian. If you're a veteran player and playing a Ranger, there's definitely a difference between you and a new player, 100%. A dual-wielding short sword Ranger is probably the best. You know, all those Drist clones that are going in. But we all have to acknowledge, the Ranger still at some times lacks damage. The Ranger is good at a lot of things, but not in the way that the Druid is. It has a lot of potential, but it's not enough to get over the Cleric or Paladin. Although, you know what? I think with the new subclasses, with Horizon Walker, with Gloomstalker, with Swarmkeeper, I think a veteran Ranger player now is getting over the Monk. I think they're there. I don't think they're getting over the Cleric, obviously, because Clerics can just keep parties alive, and Rangers can't really do that. But Rangers have a lot of unique abilities. They are allowing players to interact with a part of the game that you're not usually interacting with, which is the exploratory pillar of the game. But it's not enough to get them past Paladin or Cleric. It's enough to jump them over Monk, but right now, as of June 2021, Rangers B. Alright, the Rogue. Here we go. C. Rogue for veteran players isn't a lot. I mean, you'll be able to do some things better as a veteran player with a Rogue. But Rogues sneak attack, and they roll high numbers. And not much else. Like, think about the typical Rogue that you might play, an Assassin Rogue. What are some of the veteran things that will help you? Maybe knowing about surprise rounds, maybe thinking ahead, using your disguise kit, getting, like a 1 critical hit in combat for all of that effort that you're putting into your Assassin Rogue? I mean, you'll know about other subclasses, you'll know about other things, but Rogue's power doesn't peak very high. Like, you'll be doing a lot of single target damage, but everything else above the Rogue are helping their party more. Like, a Rogue helps the Rogue, mostly. Rogues help Rogues. Everything else above that helps a lot of other people. You're giving your party a lot because you're playing that character, even the Ranger. Even the Ranger has Healing Spirit. They have Pass Without Trace. They have things to help the party. A Rogue usually has to go off on their own, and that could cause more problems for the party. Rogues are just that. They are rogues. Like, you can't really trust them. And veteran players, from what I've seen, they want more consistency, because a rogue sometimes can be very inconsistent. Rogues don't get a lot of attacks. You miss an attack on the round and that you're flat out of luck, Rogue. Like, you just missed your shot. You missed your opportunity to really help in a combat. And so rogues are very boom or bust, and if you are a new player, that's going to help you a lot, because you'll at least be able to do 2 or 3 cool things per session. As a veteran player, you really want to be doing more, and usually veteran players know that they can do more. And the rogue subclasses that try to give them more tools, like Arcane Trickster, I kind of find a little bit lackluster. Maybe I'll make a video about the Arcane Trickster and why I don't think it lives up to what it could be due to its limiting nature. But yeah, Rogue, C tier. Next up, we're going with the Sorcerer, and for a veteran player, Sorcerer is C. Because, and this is super easy, right? Sorcerers don't have a lot of spells. They don't have the spells that other spell casting classes do. And therefore, if you're a veteran player that wants to be doing a lot, Sorcerer's not going to help you there. You have a whole bunch of other options that you can do. You got, a little bit more health, better con saves, but Sorcerer's another class where it's like, okay, I'm taking a few levels in Sorcerer, and then I'm multi-classing out of this if I'm a veteran player. And we're not really talking about those capabilities. So right now, Sorcerer's C, it has some tricks to it. You have your Divine Soul Sorcerer or your Aberrant Sorcerer, but it's not enough to even get it over the Rogue, because the Rogue can do a lot in the stealth category and can help other people, and you can be very effective. Sorcerer, I just feel it's kind of limiting, to be honest. Now, maybe there are Sorcerer players out there who are like, you're completely wrong. And hey, I tell me in the comments, like, hey, Sorcerer, you're sleeping on it. It's actually really, really good at these higher levels, and here's why. I'd love to hear it. But for me, in my experience, Sorcerer C. Alright, now we are going with the Warlock. The Warlock. A class that casts Eldritch Blast. Let's be honest here. If you're a veteran player, and you have access to so much knowledge about D&D 5th edition, and then you go and you try to play a Warlock, and you realize, wait a minute, I have 2 spell slots? Yeah, I have all these invocations, but I have these spells that I want to use. And then for the rest of this, I'm casting Eldritch Blast. Before 5th level, if I miss, like, I'm doing nothing. And then, if I don't pick up the right Eldritch invocations to buff my Eldritch Blast, I'm not doing any damage, and all of a sudden it starts to be like, you can either do one of 2 things. You can buff your Eldritch Blast with your invocations, and be somewhat effective in combat, kind of holding your own if you don't miss your shots. Or 2, you can take invocations so that outside of combat, you're better, but inside of combat, you're not pulling your weight. And you have that patron relationship, and that patron relationship is great for veteran and new players. It's really good for new players because it gets them into role-playing and understanding their character. But veteran players can do that. I mean, there are other options. You can go Cleric or Paladin for that kind of relationship. Heck, you can go literally any other class and kind of have a Warlock patron relationship, just not be a Warlock. And so we reach a point where, yes, Warlocks are really, really good for new players, but if you're not a new player, you want more. Warlocks are really good for introing people into the game, but just like Barbarians, who are really good at introing you into the game, getting a hold of some simple mechanics and letting you be decent no matter what, it's not going to allow you to take the next step. That's what we're looking for with these classes, to take the next step. And when you're only getting 4 spell slots, you're not taking very many steps. Alright, next we're moving on to the Wizard. And the Wizard here, top of A. Wizards change the game. They will change your game very, very quickly. And they do that because they have access to so many spells. And veteran players who have really been working on their creativity, who have those juices flowing, hey, that Wizard is going to be a beast on the battlefield once they get to higher levels. That's the key feature there. Once they get to higher levels, you got to get a Wizard past level 5, and that's can be difficult sometimes because that Wizard, it's got a D6 hit die. It's got no con save proficiency. You, as a Wizard, starting off, are weak. That there's no other way to put it. You are a weakling. But once you get Fireball and beyond, Lord have mercy on the souls of your enemies. You will turn them into a little pile of cinders, which is awesome. It's what we want with a Wizard. You, at higher levels, once you get 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th level spells, yeah, DM's gonna have to really be thinking about your character in terms of a combat. Or not. I mean, there are ways to fight off a wizard. Like, that's why it's not in S tier. It's not because of the health. It's because, as a DM, I can deal with like a veteran wizard player. I can have anti-magic, anti-magic fields. I can have people with counterspell. I can have really, like, brutish thug enemies who can just teleport up to the wizard because, guess what? They don't have any AC, and they don't have much health. So when you're up there in a fight with a wizard, yeah, like, you can still be taken out, even at the highest levels. Even when you are warping reality. Someone gets up close to you, that wizard all of a sudden is toast. Like, you're not saving that wizard. They're gone. Like, they have been dealt with. Now, getting to the wizard is difficult because a veteran wizard player is going to have walls of defenses. They will have contingency spells. They'll have glyphs. They'll have everything in their power to keep themselves safe. They'll probably just be flying around in the air, being untouchable. But if you can get to them, or you are dispelling them, or counterspelling them, or any number of other things, you can make sure that your wizard isn't completely breaking the curve. Not completely. Druid or Bard, they're completely breaking things if they're a veteran player. Like, they are insane. A wizard? Depends. It really depends on your DM, what the pre-written adventure is. Some pre-written adventures are going to make a wizard incredibly powerful. Others are going to limit the power of the wizard. And at this point, they're so close to S tier. They're so close. But I think that they're just at the top of A because there are things that a DM can deploy to slow down a wizard without completely, like, changing everything around stopping that wizard player from destroying their entire combat encounter. So, for that reason, A. But just the threat of their AoEs, though, the threat of an evocation wizard dropping a fireball in the middle of a swarm of enemies, I mean, it's close. It's close, everyone. But I am placing them in A. Maybe I'll do a Redux someday and say, nope, I've changed my mind. Wizard is going up to S. Now, Bloodhunter. Bloodhunter is interesting. Matt Mercer's class. And, alright, Bloodhunter is a difficult class, has a lot of options, and here's the thing, some of the Bloodhunter's options aren't even that good. And because of that, I think Bloodhunter is bottom of B. I'm pretty confident about putting it at bottom of B tier. B tier is getting a little big, but like, the Bloodhunter is B because I don't think it's C with the Rogue, because it does help the party. If you're a veteran Bloodhunter, you have advantage on many, many skills that will allow you to learn more about creatures. You can output decent damage in combat. Your blood curses, your blood maledicts are very helpful. You do have some subclasses for the Bloodhunter. Order of the Mutant, Order of the Ghost Slayer come to mind that are very good, that do help. Profane Soul as well. It is helpful. And yeah, and as a veteran player, you can get more out of a Bloodhunter, much more than, you know, a new player. You will probably not be forgetting all the Bloodhunter abilities, but there will be times when you want to use an ability, but then you realize that this reduction to my health in the long run is probably just going to get me killed. Like, that's the unfortunate reality of a Bloodhunter. A lot of the abilities are just going to get you killed. Where if you are taking that damage, you have to understand, I am probably going to die here. Or if I'm not going to die, I'm going to weaken myself or put myself in greater danger, and I don't want to do that. So, for that reason, Bloodhunter, B tier. So, going through the list, kind of recapping the tiers, D is a tier where you are holding yourself back as a veteran player, in my opinion. If you're going something in the D tier, I think you're going to be on the same level as a new player, mostly. There might be some things that you're doing better, but really, the power difference isn't going to be incredible. C, you are going to get more in the D tier. You're not helping your party, though. You're not doing everything that you could be doing, and at some points, if you are helping your party, it could backfire, and these options just aren't as powerful as B. B tier, all solid options for a veteran player. Top of B, so Paladins and Clerics, obviously much better. Bottom of B, Ranger, Monk, and Blood Hunter. There still might be some things that you can't do. But if you're a veteran player and you specialize and you know exactly what you're doing, hey, you're going to be fine. You're going to be able to execute what you want to execute, and you're going to still be able to help your party. A tier, Fighter, Artificer, Wizard. You're going to start changing the game a little bit. Your DM is going to be aware of you. You are going to be a foundational member of your party. A Wizard, Artificer, or Fighter, if you are a veteran player and get to high enough levels, will be a foundational member of any party's strategy, whether in combat or out of combat. They will be able to help and boost everyone around them tremendously. Wizard and Artificer with their spells and items, and Fighter is, you're absorbing so much damage on the battlefield. And with your tactics and with what you can do, you can keep people safe. Much better than, at least for a melee character, than even something like a Paladin. I think the Fighter in the hands of a veteran player, tremendously powerful. Then we go up to S. S tier classes, the Bard and the Druid, really hard time stopping as a DM. A veteran player who is going with one of these things will be dramatically impacting your game. They can pull shit out that other classes just can't, and they have all these hidden tricks that they can use, and before you know what's going on, they have completely altered a pre-written adventure or a homebrew campaign, and they're just going nuts. Now, we know that with the Bard. That's kind of the reason why they have such the reputation that they do, where even baseline, the Bard can be used by a newer player and get a lot out of it. And a newer player can go a little bit crazy and cause a little bit of chaos in a campaign. The only reason we don't hear the same thing about those fucking Druids is because they're super difficult to play. But with a veteran player who knows what's going on, who can look at a troll and be like, look at that. Fire damage will kill you. I mean, Druids can just change everything. A Druid player changes everything. And that's why, in my opinion, it is the strongest class for a veteran player. But what do you guys think? Is my list crazy? Like, do any of you have any objections with this list? Please, let me know in the comments. Let's have a conversation. What do you think is S tier? What do you think is the strongest class for specifically veteran players? Strongest in terms of putting together that raw power, as well as rewarding that veteran insight. So, this is where we'll be ending the video. Hey, subscribe. Maybe I am a small channel. A lot of my viewers aren't subscribed. I think like 99%. And I do want to grow. I mean, I'm not going to say, hey, please, go subscribe to my channel right now. But it really would help. I really want these videos to be reaching a larger audience. So, hey, if you like the content here, you watched all the way to the end, please consider subscribing. It would help me a lot. And also, thank you so much, viewer, for entering the dungeon.